Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for July 28, 2023. Yes, it's the last Friday in July, the Cyber Disclosure Rules edition. And we begin with that story from the Associated Press, which reports that the SEC has adopted rules requiring public companies to disclose within 4 days all cybersecurity breaches that could affect their bottom line. Delays will be permitted if immediate disclosure poses serious national security or public safety risks. The new rules were essentially adopting the rules that had been proposed. And finally, we're going to get a requirement that companies actually disclose their cybersecurity breaches instead of hiding like they have been. Next up from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Richard Vandeford reporting that Judge Kevin McNulty who's overseeing the case against Cognizant Technology's former president and former general counsel for FCPA violations, has said that federal prosecutors did not outsource a bribery investigation to corporate counsel or counsel selected by Cognizant, and therefore federal criminal procedural protections do not apply. This was a very closely watched case. It's a very important case because many judges had raised concerns about the DOJ directing investigations. But there was a very thorough record, a very thorough hearing, and a very thorough order issued by the court denying all claims by the defendants. Next up from the Financial Times, President Zelensky warns Ukraine officials over corruption after 2 arrests. He has warned government officials and lawmakers that personal enrichment will not be tolerated, and no one forgives military or civilian for engaging in bribery and corruption. So Ukraine continues to try to clean itself up. It certainly is a good step forward. We hope that President Zelensky can continue this momentum. And our final story comes to us from Bloomberg, which reports that a former Malaysian bank chief testified against the country's ex-prime minister, Najib Razak, in a trial linked to 1MDB. She said she expressed concern on the rising debt of the state fund, where there was no knowledge that some of the monies were then in the personal account of the president, who was involved in corruption. Of course, 1MDB is one of the biggest and most ubiquitous scandals over the past few years, reaching literally up to the Prime Minister of Malaysia. So more testimony directly implicating the former Prime Minister, I should say, of Malaysia, and hopefully J-Lo will be brought to justice at some point. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.